All right, so AGI. This is like the second episode for about this thing that I'm doing, AI Renaissance podcast. So yeah, let's get started. I'm trying to keep these things kind of like unedited or like just completely organic. Yeah, I'm just trying to like be myself here and just talk about these things as I research them. By the way, I'm doing a series. Like, if you're interested in AI specifically, like understanding how AI works and all that, and like you're interested in learning Python and learning the technologies behind I started a series here on this channel where on all mine, basically, YouTube, you know, where you're listening to this probably, or you might be listening to this on Spotify. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, I'm not sure if I'm gonna publish it on Spotify, but whatever. So, if you're interested in that, on my YouTube channel, you can find a playlist called AI Unlocked or AI Unlocked series. That's where I am just doing a small series where I'm covering like a brief overview of AI, how it works, how to get it started, how to get started basically, how to use Python, how to learn Python, and just learning the basics of Python in general. So if you're interested in that, I highly like recommend that you check it out. With that being said, today's topic is about AGI. How do we know? So like, how do we know once we like actually reached AGI? I spent like, how many hours did I spend on this topic? I spent like the last, let's see, spent a good amount of. Oh, I spent like the last 12 hours on this topic, like researching on this topic, on AGI, and yeah, I learned a lot. Like it's crazy. This idea of AGI, artificial general intelligence. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. I'm not gonna lie. It's very overwhelming. It's a very overwhelming thing to research. Like learning AI, like learning how AI works is one thing. Like learning about Python. I guess this is just me. I'm not sure. Like maybe everyone's mind works differently. I guess some people are like find learning math a lot easier than programming. Some people find programming a lot easier than math. I guess it just varies from person to person. Some people find, learn literature a lot easier than anything else. I personally find literature super hard. I struggle with it. Everyone's different. But anyways, point is, AI is one of those fields that it's like, you just like learn everything about everything because it's what I like to call hopefully I'm saying this correctly, a transdisciplinary field in the sense that you are learning a whole bunch of like disciplines. You're learning science, you're learning mathematics, like you're basically learning computer science, you're learning mathematics, you're learning, like if you're really diving into it, you're also learning cognitive science, neuroscience, you're learning philosophy of mind, philosophy of language even. Like if you dive really, really deep into this stuff, you can like cover a whole like breadth of topics in this field. You got let's see, like so I was like listening to this guy called David Shapiro, and bro, this man, he knows a lot. He knows his stuff, and I really admire him. I really admire the stuff that he has done, the stuff that he has researched. I'm still very new to his work, and I look forward to researching even more about the stuff that he has basically researched. So I'm looking forward to reading his stuff, reading a whole bunch of other people's stuff on this topic, on artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence. Because here's the thing, like in AI, something I've noticed is we got like a lot of camps. We have like the people who are interested in just using AI for like making money online, right? Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Me making this channel actually is my intention of kind of like turning my passion into something that can sustain me over time. Right now, I'm not at that place right now, but hopefully in the future that would be the case. With that being said, yeah, so there are people who like do a bunch of AI agent stuff. Like they use AI agents in order to create a lot of workflows using maybe like LangChain or Crew AI, and they create these workflows for companies or for businesses. Some people actually create production ready AI agentic systems from scratch using only like Python and fast API. And that's something that we're definitely going to cover in the channel as well, as I document my journey in, learning all these tools and sharing them with you. I've been told that I'm very good at synthesizing information for people, or like, explaining things. So yeah, hopefully you can get some value from that. So yeah, there's a people that like use AI agents for like, create like making like money online for business and all that. And then there's the other camp of people who are using AI to build startups, right? They're like trying to vibe code. I don't know if you heard about that term, vibe coding, where you're basically using AI in order to code your application for you. So you're using a bunch of tools like Cursor. You're using tools like what's that other popular Windsurf. I think VS Code came out with another interesting AI companion tool. Anyways, there's a whole bunch of like AI code editors. I personally use Cursor, but there are those camp of people who are interested in the startups. There's a camp of people who are interested in like the business side of AI and like all the tools that are out there. And then there's the other side of people who are interested in like, okay, cool. So AI works. So we can use AI for all these use cases, right? But how does AI actually work? How does AI actually work? How does artificial intelligence work, right? So those are the people who are interested in things like machine learning. I'm personally interested in machine learning. How does AI actually work? Like machine learning is like, see, here's a nice analogy that I like. Machine learning is the brains of AI, right? So machine learning is the brains of AI, while AI engineering is the body of AI, right? So machine learning is the brains, AI engineering is the body. Now, the brains, right, the center, that's like the central aspect. That's what machine learning is about. It's all about, like mathematics, linear algebra. How can we mathematize the idea of manipulating and storing information, right? And once we actually have that mathematized, then we can implement algorithms to do this, right? So we actually like use programming languages in order to manipulate a bunch of data. So that's machine learning. And then of course there's the what I like to call the AI warriors, right? The AI individuals who like to take these algorithms and actually implement them in practical use cases. And then you got like your AI entrepreneurs, and all that good stuff. So there's like a bunch of like players in the game, and everyone has their own role in this game. And then we have an interesting field, right? An interesting, what do you call it? Another interesting category in this entire landscape of AI. We got what I like to call the AI philosophers. So in the AI philosophers, man, we got the people talking about AI ethics and safety. We got the people talking about AI and consciousness. We got the people talking about like the risks associated with AI or the economics behind AI. So this is a field where like it could be very, very overwhelming because we're integrating a whole bunch of different academic disciplines. Like it can get pretty overwhelming. We're like if we're talking about the future of AI, if we're talking about like okay, what are the implications for AI? What are the implications like how is society going to look like once we've achieved AGI, for example, once we've achieved ASI even? Like are jobs going to become obsolete? If that's the case, then what are humans going to be doing? People are probably going to end up in a crisis because people are probably going to feel like their lives no longer have any meaning, right? So we're gonna like dive into a meaning crisis. We're already in a meaning crisis if you think about it. A lot of people are starting to feel like this thing that the philosopher Nietzsche predicted when he made a statement that God is dead, right? So when Nietzsche said that God is dead, if I understand it correctly, he wasn't saying that he like in a way killed God literally or that he disproved God's existence. It was more like, okay, once we have a society that like no longer sets its or grounds its values on a higher being, for example, then we're left with nihilism. And that's going to leave people almost towards despair because they're not able to find any meaning in their lives. So people try to create their own meanings in their lives, but some people are not able to do that. Some people are successful at it, other people are partially successful at it, and it just creates like chaos in the world. But anyways, that's I'm not gonna get into that. It's like more philosophy, deep philosophy right there. But yeah, so the implications of that is crazy because you have to study economics as well, right? You have to study economic theory to truly understand, the economic cycle and to understand how these technologies would unfold, and understands like the principles of behind economics and just like a lot of the psychological patterns in economics as well. Like when people talk about inflation, and how like the feds are always like or like how just in general the institutions are just like very in a way cocky about inflation that like yeah like no, it's not that bad guys, Inflation, yeah, but it's controlled. Trust us. Like, inflation is definitely controlled. Like that same mentality, and the next thing you know, things just go in chaos. We like the bubble, the economic bubble just bursts, and then all of a sudden things are crashing. That same level of arrogance or that same level of like naivety when it comes to like inflation could also be applied to AGI. So it's like, yeah, don't worry, guys. Like, we're not really at AGI yet, or if we are, we're not really gonna get there that like very soon. Or even if it's like some people are like, okay, yeah, once we achieve AGI, but it's not gonna be that bad, right? It's kind of that same attitude, right? That's something that I noticed. Now, I don't have a particular stance on this yet. I just spent like the last 12 hours researching on this stuff, but that is definitely an attitude that I've noticed. Now, some people are at the camp, are like, in the doomsday camp where it's like, okay, AI is going to destroy us all, while other people are like, AI is going to save humanity, right? Personally, like, AI, man, AI is just a tool. It's just a tool. The problem is not the AI. The problem is how we use the tool. I think I talked about this before in my previous videos. Can't remember exactly what video it was on my YouTube channel, but technology enhances thought. Technology just enhances the attributes you already possess. So if you're like a lying individual, technology is just going to enhance your ability to lie. That's all it's going to do. If you're a virtuous person, then technology is going to enhance your ability to be virtuous, if that makes sense, or your attribute of virtuousness, if that's even a word, right? It only enhances the things that you already contain or that you already have. So that's the thing. Technology is independent of any ethics. It's just a tool, right? So human beings are not going to like we're not going to like the only way that this whole AGI thing can like really become messed up is if humanity becomes messed up, but it kind of already is to a certain extent. But the problem is not the technology. The problem is not the AGI. The problem is the people behind it. That is the main issue at hand, right? So this is why I always talk about integrating AI in education or just transforming the education system. Maybe not necessarily reforming the education system because that's already a pretty really hard job to do, but maybe transforming the education system. I've been talking about how we should probably use AI to synthesize information, how we should use AI to like synthesize the information that is in the web because I feel like we have an overflow of information in the internet. And yes, we may like it's not necessary to learn everything that there is, right? But we don't have any clue as to how to process all the information that's online. We just blindly follow the algorithm, and the next thing you know, we're addicted to our phones, and all of a sudden our dopamine levels are all over the place, and that's a problem. That's a problem. That really affects your mental health, and it's affecting our mental health at a global scale, where we're having a mass psychosis. That's a problem. We need to find a way to truly synthesize this information that's online. Can AI help us do that? Probably, yeah, probably. If we, you know, truly configure AI and align it to proper instilled values, then I'm sure this is definitely doable. Now, I was talking about how AI is one of those fields that are just a transdisciplinary field where you got like things like philosophy, computer science, English, literature, cognitive science, neuroscience, biology. You have so many disciplines to really like if you're getting into the what's and the whys of AI and the hows of AI. So if you're gonna be an AI philosopher, you gotta be a polymath. You gotta be like really into. You cannot be a purist. You cannot be a math purist. You cannot be a philosophy purist. You cannot be an economics purist. You cannot be a computer science purist. You just cannot be a purist in general. You have to be a polymath if you're really going to be an excellent AI philosopher. I don't know if I consider myself an AI philosopher. I don't think so. I think that's a field that I still have a lot of work to do. I do consider myself a general philosopher, though. I have studied philosophy a lot. I've read plenty of philosophy books, like undergraduate undergraduate philosophy textbooks that cover metaphysics, epistemology, logic, political philosophy, things of that nature. And it's very interesting. I've had lots of fun reading philosophy stuff. So this is some stuff that I'm really interested in diving into, even though it feels overwhelming. But nah, man, I'm not intimidated. I love learning about that stuff. You always feel like, you just like, the more you learn, the less you know, man. It's frustrating, but at the same time, it's a privilege that very few people have, and I'm just very grateful to have that privilege, you know? Not everyone has that privilege. Not everyone actually has access to these devices, to the internet, to books, right? That's something that very few people actually have, and we don't take a lot of time. Like if you're listening to this, we don't really take a lot of time to appreciate that. Now, with that little sermon like out of the way, so AGI, how do we actually know once we have AGI? Like really, how like think about it. Artificial general intelligence. I feel like no pun intended here, but I feel like that phrase in general it's too general. No pun intended, right? It's just too fuzzy. It's not specific. It doesn't tell us anything. And I guess before we define AGI, we have to define AI. What is even AI? And I actually wrote an article on intelligence, just my own little, philosophical ramblings on what is intelligence on my Substack. It's just my own little personal thoughts there. You can check it out on my allmind.substack.com. Just like look for the article called "What is Intelligence." Like so for me, and so okay, artificial intelligence. First of all, the reason why it's so difficult to define AGI is because number one, it's difficult to define AI. And number two, we have no idea how to actually define intelligence. That's a problem. There's so many theories on intelligence. Number one, there's IQ, but like IQ is so narrow, right? It's a very, very narrow test that a lot of the times focuses on a lot of like mathematical intelligence, a lot of like puzzle solving. Like I'm probably butchering this, but it's very narrow. It only focuses on things like maybe memory, logical thinking, reasoning, abstract visualization, that kind of thinking. It doesn't focus on things like creativity. It doesn't focus on things like, I mean, it does take creativity to solve a lot of the problems in IQ tests, but it's not a creativity that's like if you take a look at people that are just artistic geniuses, for example, that's something that IQ is like an IQ test is not going to measure very well, and it's not correlated with that. If you take a look at people who are kinesthetically intelligent, that's a really like I'm into MMA. Like I train jiu-jitsu, and I am not very kinesthetically intelligent. Well, I'm a beginner, right? I'm a beginner, so all beginners are not very kinesthetically intelligent. But you know some people that are like just gifted athletes, you know? I admire those individuals. Like, I think that's really awesome. Like the way you're able to just, the way how some people are just connected to their own like, physical, to their own bodies. Like that's really cool. Kinesthetic intelligence, spatial intelligence, the ability to like literally just like memorize an entire map. Like there are so many types of intelligence out there, man. It's just not. It's very hard to actually quantify something, and that's the problem. The problem is that we don't actually have a proper theory of intelligence in psychology. We have IQ tests. Sometimes we have EQ tests, which is emotional intelligence. Oftentimes, that's actually more accurate or more useful when it comes to like real life situations. The thing about the problem of emotional intelligence (EQ), which is actually interesting because like it's interesting to see how emotional intelligence, you can like relate that to the AI alignment problem, maybe, but anyways, just making some random connections here. But anyways, so intelligence, we don't know how to define it, right? It's very, very difficult to define it. So if we cannot even define intelligence, then how the heck are we going to actually define AGI, right? So that's the problem. That's the core. That's the heart of the problem right there. With that being said, how do I try to define intelligence? Well, I don't really define intelligence. Okay, I kind of do, but I take a different approach. So kind of what I like, the best way that we can really define AI, to be honest, I just take a more practical approach. Like AI for me is just a system that predicts reality. It just approximates reality. Because that's all human beings do. If you think about it, what are human beings? So that's another deep question, right? What even is consciousness? But this is why philosophy is also very important. Like if you're going to dive into these fields, you got to learn philosophy. You cannot escape it. So consciousness, man, there's this thing called qualia. in philosophy of mind, and qualia is basically the introspective, inaccessible phenomena of your mind. And I kind of got that definition from, I think, Stanford philosophy.edu. Anyways, I don't even remember the exact URL, but I got that from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and basically the definition of qualia. It's that aspect of your mind that you just can't like share with anybody else. So imagine this. Like, I don't know if you guys ever like thought about this, but like when I was a kid, I used to ask my friend like, what if your yellow is different to my yellow, right? So we're both seeing, let's say, I don't know, a yellow balloon, whatever. If we're both seeing a yellow balloon, right? Actually, let me use a better example. Okay, let's use green, right? Let's look at a tree. So we look at a tree, and most of us would agree that trees are green. Well, depending on the season and depending on the tree, right? But most trees tend to be green, right? So if we take a look at a tree, all of us agree that it's green. We label it as green, right? We describe it as green because we're all looking at the same tree. The tree that I'm looking at right now, when I look outside my window, I see a tree and I describe it as green. Okay, but what if your green is different to my green? Like, what if the way that you're perceiving green is different to the way I'm perceiving green? So if I were to hypothetically jump into your own mind, into your own consciousness, let's suppose that somehow I was able to leave my own body or leave my own mind and somehow jump into your own mind and perceive the tree through your eyes while retaining the memories from my own brain, would I experience visually the same? Would I have the same visual experience that I was having when I was in my own body? That's a very difficult philosophical question. Now, if you're a materialist, that is, if you believe that our brain, like our consciousness is just like emerging from a bunch of chemical interactions, then you're probably going to say, yeah, it's going to be the same experience. It's probably going to be the same visual experience. But that's the problem, because this is why it's called the hard problem of consciousness. If you just Google it, like look it up, the hard problem of consciousness, we cannot find or a way to explain this thing called qualia through material means. There's just no way to actually do it. These two things are like completely ontologically different from each other. Qualia in itself, consciousness, that experience is very different to the things that are happening in your brain. Yes, there are correlations, and if I do affect a part of my brain, that's going to affect my experience. But they are different things. They're still ontologically different. Correlation is not causation. Anyways, I'm not going to get into the whole consciousness debate here, but those are like, that is something that is uniquely to us. We're aware of our own existence. Consciousness, in a way, is something that gives awareness to our own existence. So that is something that is intrinsic to us human beings and just to intelligence in general. Now, because we have consciousness, we, in a way, intrinsic to us through billions of years of evolution as well, we have this intrinsic desire to expand our consciousness. And not in the woo-woo sense, not in the opening up my 7 chakras sense, but in the, like, just in the natural sense. Like, we have a desire to preserve our own existence. That is the instinct of survival, basically. That's probably the more ground to earth way to describe it. The instinct is to survive, to not die, basically. We don't want to die. Nobody wants to die, really. So we have this intrinsic desire to preserve our consciousness, to expand our consciousness, to like continue experiencing stuff that is going to maximize our well-being, if that makes sense. So we could describe that as life, if we want to call it that. Some philosophers call this strange phenomena, like this strange human experience that we're all having. Nietzsche calls it the will to power. Other philosophers, I think it was Hegel, calls it the will to life. Whatever you want to call it, or just the natural instinct to survive, right? If you're just a hardcore materialist biologist who doesn't care about philosophy at all, which is a big mistake, by the way. Check out my previous episode in this AI Renaissance podcast as to why technology and science needs philosophy. Um, anyways, so since that's the case, like consciousness is just ontologically distinct to the brain. Oh yeah, so what I was saying is life in general, that's kind of like how we can label life. It's very hard to explain it because nobody actually understands how to explain consciousness. But that in essence is what life is and what it's all about. Now, the ability to expand your consciousness, right? The ability to expand your field of awareness or your experiences, basically, your life experiences, that capacity to be able to do that is called intelligence. And that's what separates us from all the other animals. And intelligence is not something that's binary. It's not something that you turn off and on, turn on and off. It's not a toggle button that you just turn on and off. It's not something that, okay, once we pass this threshold, we're intelligent. No, that's not how intelligence works. It's more of a spectrum. If you look at human beings have like a variety of ways to experience intelligence. They have a variety of not intelligence, sorry, a variety of ways to experience life, to experience consciousness. A lot of animals don't. Most animals don't. Animals, a lot, like almost all of them, just about survival. It's just about finding food, sleeping, eating, and that's it. Like, it's literally that's literally it. Human beings, we have unique ways of experiencing life and consciousness. We have music, we have the arts, we have podcasts. Like you're listening to this. This is crazy. That this is ridiculous. The ability. I don't know if anybody of you like really internalize this. The fact that you're listening to this is it's crazy. This idea that this thing that we have society to like, that's I don't know if people take a time like a moment to really internalize how crazy this is. The fact that we have an entire society, the fact that we have technology, the fact that we have like millions of ways to experience life, to experience consciousness. I find that kind of crazy, man. Like, we have movies, for goodness sake. We have theaters. We have sports, tournaments, right? We have studies, programming, like culture, dancing, the arts, martial arts. Like, we have so many ways to experience life. And the reason why we have so many ways to experience life is because we have a high level of capacity to do so. And that high level of capacity to do so is what you call intelligence. So, intelligence is the ability to truly expand your field of awareness, to expand your consciousness, to obviously to expand your consciousness. That brings a lot of benefits because that accomplishes your initial goal of not dying, right? So, if humanity was terrible at surviving, then we wouldn't have everything that we have today. So in a way, it's kind of ironic, no? Because like humanity is constantly on the verge of extinction because of world wars, right? Because of nukes. So it's kind of ironic that I'm saying this, that we're good at survival, but at the same time we're so good at destroying ourselves. So that's kind of like ironic. It's human beings are just full of ironies. But yeah, I mean, just all of that is just a miracle. So that's intelligence. Intelligence is the capacity to expand that field of awareness. And AI, now AI, so how do we actually define AI? So AI, let's just get this straight. No, it's not aware of its own existence. A computer is not aware of its own existence. ChatGPT does not have consciousness, for goodness sake. It does not. That's not like people who think that don't actually know how AI works. So the thing is that we human beings ascribe meaning to stuff. If you remove all of consciousness, then all these computers that we have all of a sudden lose their own meaning because there is no consciousness to ascribe meaning to it, if you think about it. Now, AI in general, all it's doing is predicting reality or approximating reality. It's the same thing that human beings are doing. If I take a look at a cup of water, right? I'm approximating reality. How am I approximating reality? I'm approximating reality through vision, through my sight, right? I'm able to look at the cup of water and, due to electromagnetic waves that are bouncing off of the cup of water and entering my retina, I'm able to approximate the shape and the color and the look of the cup of water that I'm looking at, right? So I'm able to see that there's a cup there, but I'm not seeing maybe the essence of the cup. I'm not able to actually see the particles of the cup. I'm not able to see the H2O molecules of the water, if that makes sense. I could probably create a bunch of technologies that can help me do that, right? But I'm not able to see that just through my own eyes. I have limitations, right? So human beings have limitations. We have limitations on our five senses. We have limitations on our sight. We have limitations on our for our hearing, our touch, our smell. We have limitations on our five senses. So because we have limitations, there's always going to be a degree of uncertainty as to what reality is actually like. I think the philosopher Kant talked about this as well. He talked about the noumenon, the phenomena, I think. Hopefully I'm not butchering that. But basically how he talks about how like there are the things, the appearances of an object, like the cup of water, and then there's like the essence, or I'm not sure if he uses the word essence, but I think he uses the word noumenon or something like that. But there's the thing that is just transcendental to the cup in itself, that is just not accessible to the conscious mind. Now, of course, if you're a materialist, you probably don't think that's the case. You probably think that there's no metaphysics behind it. It's just particles. Whatever. Like, I'm not here to argue a metaphysics here. I'm trying to just like show you the different views of that. But something that we could all agree upon is that we're all just approximating reality. There's always going to be a level of uncertainty because, well, simply because we're not God, right? There's always going to be a degree of uncertainty towards reality, towards comprehending reality. And this is very important to understand because when we're defining AI by essence is what? Artificial intelligence. What are we human beings? Well, we're just conscious entities that have the capacity to do a bunch of cool stuff, like record a podcast, for example. Well, what happens when you create a conscious entity, not in the traditional organic evolutionary way, but through more inorganic ways? In other words, through artificial ways. That is, you get an artificial conscious entity. But that's a question. Is it actually conscious? That's the hard problem of consciousness. Okay, but does it act like a conscious entity? Maybe. So that is artificial intelligence. It's an entity that is mimicking human intelligence. It's an entity it's a machine, or whatever you want to call it, that is mimicking life, that is mimicking this desire to expand its field of awareness, if that makes sense. So it seems like it's intelligent because it seems like it's mimicking the same behavior of life. There's this really cool thing called cellular automata. And in a way, you can code out a really sophisticated algorithm of cellular automata using neural networks. And you could like really, I might actually do this on my channel. You could like create some really interesting patterns that almost look like if it was alive, or like if we had some kind of living virtual organism there. There's this really cool channel called Emergent Garden. Oh man, he does some really awesome videos on this. I might even do my own experiments. I find that stuff fascinating. Running a bunch of simulations, live simulations on the computer, I think that's pretty cool stuff. So we see this and we're like, okay, that looks intelligent. So what do? We call it artificial intelligence. Now, just to bring things, down to earth, let's take a more practical example, like computer vision. When a computer is able to detect an object, we take a look at that and it's like, okay, wow, that's really cool. That's intelligent, right? That seems very intelligent because that seems very human-like, or very I don't know, very lifelike, because only life can actually see objects and detect objects. But it's not actually seeing anything. It's just it's not actually seeing things or perceiving things the way human beings are perceiving and seeing things. It's just pure code. It's just pure information. It's just approximating reality in a different way, in a non-conscious way, if that makes sense. It's not aware of its own existence. It's just perceiving reality. No, not perceiving reality. It's approximating reality in a way that doesn't necessitate the attribute or the property of self-awareness, if that makes sense. ChatGPT is just predicting the next token. Well, depending obviously that's not the whole story. The initial models of ChatGPT were predicting the next token. The models nowadays, the reasoning models, tend to use a bit more sophisticated algorithms like reinforcement learning and all that, thinking chains. Anyways, I'm not going to dive into that, but the point is, it's just in essence statistics. It's a bunch of statistics and a bunch of functions. That's all it is. Well, that's not all it is, right? There's a lot of heavy computing power and all that, but if you're just stripping it down to its essence, it's a bunch of algorithms that are just step-by-step procedures following the universal rules of mathematics. It's all it's doing. So when you have like a simple linear regression that's machine learning right there. A linear regression model is just, I mean, you wouldn't really even call that an AI, but technically it's machine learning when you're doing a linear regression, for example. But when you have linear regression that is non-linear, that is actually non-linear and very sophisticated and have multiple layers, and not only that, but it's using very advanced linear algebra techniques to understand context, then we label that as artificial intelligence. But all that is just a transformer architecture that is trained on a whole bunch of data. And that's all ChatGPT does. So it's not consciousness, it's nothing, none of that. It's just it's none of those things. So let's get back to this topic on AGI. Because I think I kind of like went off topic because there's a lot that I need to talk about. And I'm already hitting the limit of, I'm already at 37 minutes, geez. But I might have to like retitle this because I was initially going to be talking about AGI. I'll probably just do that in the next episode. Either way, I'm still researching this stuff. But how do we know once we have AGI? Well, here's the thing. Like I said before, intelligence is just a spectrum. So because AI is just the ability to approximate reality, and we have a bunch of algorithms, machine learning algorithms that can help us do that, because we need certain tools. In order to approximate reality, we need the tools in order to approximate reality, and those tools are statistics and probability theory. Because remember, we're dealing with uncertainties. We're dealing with uncertainties, and we need a way to measure and quantify these degrees of uncertainty, and that's what statistics and probability theory are all about. It allows us to quantify uncertainty. So we need a set of algorithms that can help us quantify this degree of uncertainty. And that's when we get the whole field of machine learning, right? We have linear regression, we have k-means clustering, we have neural networks, we're getting into deep learning, transformer models. We have all these models that all it does at the end of the day is just prediction. That's all it boils down to, prediction. Whether you're predicting a set of pixels in order to detect objects, or whether you're detecting, or whether you're predicting, or whether you're like classifying an image, again, you're still predicting. You're just predicting the present. So that's all we're doing. We're just predicting or approximating reality more accurately. So AGI, like artificial general intelligence, it's very fuzzy, that term, because like, okay, how do we actually know once we reach AGI? Because we already have AI. We already have machines that can already approximate reality. We already have algorithms that can are doing very well at classifying objects, not just classifying objects, but also detecting individuals and videos, and can generate like literally films. I think Google came out with that. I think that's crazy. We have obviously ChatGPT. We have all these large language models that can do a whole bunch of stuff. So how do we actually define AGI? Is it the ability for the AI to do everything that human beings can do? I feel like, I don't know, like if we're gonna say that, I feel like I agree with David Shapiro, where we're just like we're just adding more and more standards to it. It's like before we were just saying AGI is just maybe once we have like an AI that can maybe code and that can write, and that can write poems and do a whole bunch of stuff, that can do philosophy, that can do economics, that can generate new ideas. But we already have that. Like literally just a couple of months ago, O3 came out. So it's like, what if we already have AGI, right? What if we already have artificial general intelligence? It's just a baby AGI that is not like what we were thinking about, like what we were expecting because we watched too many sci-fi movies. But like in a couple of years, this spectrum of AGI or of intelligence is going to rapidly increase, and then we're going to have something that's a lot more obvious. And the tricky thing about this is that the newer generations are going to be like, whatever, but the older generations are going to be like, oh crap, man, I saw this in a movie, right? So that's kind of where we're at. So it's some strange but interesting times. I don't think so that's AGI, right? I don't think that's a right definition, like the ability to do everything. Personally, I think we already have AGI. I think we're just like continuing to, set higher standards, or just like continue to push the goalpost down the line. Like it's just So like when do we have actually AGI if we just continue pushing down the line? Because if we're saying that AGI is just the ability for the model to do everything that human beings can do, then we may as well just call that ASI, artificial superintelligence. Because I mean, artificial superintelligence is just an AI that can do everything that human beings can do, but better. Now that's a completely other type of reality that we would be living in, but and it's mind-boggling to think about that. But if we're going to say that AGI is just the model, the ability for the model to do everything that human beings can do, and ASI is just that, but do it better than human beings, I don't know. I feel like that's too vague. I feel like, okay, then we're not really getting anywhere with definitions here. We're just playing word games. Like, because if AI can do everything that human beings can do, the next day it's already going to be able to do those things a lot better, right? Because here's the thing, AGI is not going to be a centralized robot that can do stuff. It's not going to be a central, that's not how AI works. A lot of these AIs are running on a whole bunch of servers. We got a whole bunch of servers for storing the data, um, manipulating the data, like a whole bunch of databases and data centers that are like constantly sending messages to each other through the network and are constantly processing a whole bunch of data, cleaning up a data, like training constantly and updating constantly on user usage. Like it's just a whole bunch of stuff. Like AI is a lot more decentralized. Well, maybe not decentralized in terms of power, but decentralized in terms of functionality. And because that's the case, then AGI is not going to look the way that people. It's not going to look like a physical humanoid robot, if that makes sense. We are going to soon have humanoid robots, but it's not going to. AGI is not going to look like the movies. Let's just say that. Like it's going to be a lot more digital because we have more control in the digital world, right? So if you want to define AI as just like a humanoid robot that looks like human beings and that can pretty much do most things that human beings can do, fine. Then define that as AGI. Then I guess we don't have AGI yet, even though we're getting close to it. But I just don't think that's how we should define AGI. I think just saying like I think personally we already have AGI. It was just, getting the large language model to do stuff, adding agentic functionalities to it and really fine tuning it and adding a lot more reasoning, like actual reasoning models, not just predicting the next token, right? Because before we just had a large language model. Now we have a large language model with reinforcement learning and a lot more, reasoning capabilities, like the AI who beat this Go champion. If you guys heard of the game Go. But yeah, so personally, I think that we already have AGI. I think it's just a very, very primitive AGI that can code, that can think, because it can do a lot of deep stuff. It can do philosophy, man. If you try O3 out, there's some pretty cool stuff that O3 can do. Now, is it going to conquer the world and everything? Is it going to take our jobs? I don't think so. I think David Shapiro's did mention that it will, but I just don't. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced of that. I'll have to do my own research, but I'm totally not. Like I'm not convinced. Maybe down the line, but I don't think that we're as close to that as David Shapiro might expect it. But that's just me. But I do agree with him that like, well, actually, I'm not sure if this is what he thinks, but personally, I believe that we, in a way, already have a mini AGI. It's just a matter of like training it, like improving it over time. Which takes us to another topic where it's like, okay, when are we going to get to the point where AGI can actually do everything human beings can do? Now, that's a completely other question, right? That's the real question, in my opinion. But I'll save that for another podcast. So for now, this is just a whole bunch of research. Like, shoot, man, diving into so many topics, philosophy, consciousness. It's crazy, man. I'm not even done. This is just the beginning. But hope you enjoyed that episode. It's a bit more random and less structured than the last one. But yeah, I'm just trying to like keep the authenticity here. Hope you guys really enjoyed this. I'm enjoying this. I'm having a lot of fun researching this kind of stuff. I'm trying to start a community here. I'm trying to start an AI community where we just like talk about, these cool topics. I want to learn more from you guys. This is also a way for me to like document my entire journey, for me to like understand like really meet people who are way better than I am at this stuff, so I can like learn myself. That would be really cool. So I want to start a community, and yeah, with that being said, hope you enjoyed. Done.